Good afternoon. Hi, Dave Gustin, Director of the School for the Future of Innovation and Society here, and welcome to our last Enlightening lunch of the semester. As you all know, this semester we've been focusing on a variety of examples of work toward justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, diversifying the academic environment, diversifying this university, and even our school and college in particular. Today, in that sequence, we have two faculty members, Stephanie Pfritman from the School of Sustainability and Miki Kittleson from the School of Politics and Global Studies, to talk to us about a program that is run by the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Sea Change program, the STEM Equity Achievement program, and about ASU's efforts to participate in this, which is, as I sort of fundamentally understand it, an effort to promote greater equity and diversity in how universities perform their work around STEM. I'll let Miki and Stephanie give any further detailed introductions of themselves here if they'd like to. As everybody knows, the format is basically about 30 minutes of presentation, then the remainder till the top of the hour, questions and answers, and then to the extent that Miki and Stephanie can continue to hang out with us, we'll let everybody but the doctoral students go, and we can get a deeper dive with the doctoral students from 1 to 1:30. And with that, thank you very much, Miki and Stephanie, for being willing to chat with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. We're really excited to be here today, so thank you. This is a great opportunity. And so we're excited to talk about the sea change efforts from ASU. And for Stephanie and I think I can speak for Stephanie on this, that our North Star in this whole endeavor has been the idea that excellence and justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, they share a synergistic relationship. They are integral to one another. And Stanley James, who's part of our team, actually said it best. She just kind of commented in conversation, and for me, this was like the major takeaway, is that there is no excellence without equity, justice, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So that's, we're talking about institutional transformation, and that's the gist of what we're talking about today, to recruit and retain both parts, both recruit and retain the full range of talent at the undergraduate level, the graduate level, and the faculty level. So the goal of the sea change process is to create an action-oriented plan to dismantle barriers for under-anticipated or underrepresented groups in STEM. And by that, we mean women of color, Latinx scholars, Black scholars, Native American scholars, first-generation scholars, LGBTQ scholars, and the multiple and overlapping forms of marginalization between those. In fact, today I just learned from Twitter is LGBT in STEM Day. I didn't know that until this morning. And it came along with a great article in Nature if you're interested in checking it out. The article is on how LGBT scholars would like to be included and welcomed in the STEM workforce. So if you're interested, it's something to check out. So sea change is, I think I'm maybe at the next slide on this one, is based on a process. Well, okay, so I think I probably hit this. These are the commitments of sea change. They're basic principles that bias, marginalization, and exclusion have prevented the full engagement of a broad range of individuals that's needed to maximize creativity and quality, as well as the full engagement of the promise of available talent in STEM education and careers. So the consequences for scientific discovery are profound, as are the consequences for students, right? So thinking about this at the faculty level, which is the kind of the focus of the first phase of the sea change endeavor, it's really important to student recruitment, to retaining students, to student success. And so probably the next one. Thanks, Stephanie. So sea change is based on this process that was first started in the UK under Athena Swan. So you may be familiar with the Athena Swan Gender Equity Charter. It's been quite successful in the UK. And so it's now used also in Ireland, Scotland, Australia. It's being piloted in Canada. It's kind of similar to a LEED certification for a building, right? So with Sea Change, there's a real opportunity to stand up as part of a global higher education community and to prioritize fundamental change, a fundamental change in culture in academia. Okay, next one. So Sea Change involves this self-assessment process, like kind of getting a baseline of where ASU is at, how we can accelerate our efforts, how we can be most effective in our efforts. And so the self-assessment as a process is not an easy lift. And it's certainly, this reflection it doesn't end, right? It continues even as new initiatives are adopted. We have to continue to try to figure out what works, what doesn't. Are there things that do more harm? I mean, that's entirely possible, right? So change really takes time and it takes a lot of effort by many people. It can't just be a few people, right? The Sea Change, they give this framework. It's a really great thing that it's a group of people that give this nice framework. It's rooted in research on this topic. And so it's purposefully aligned with other efforts that campuses may be already doing. So for example, ASU has an advance grant from the National Science Foundation. So Sea Change is aligned with that. In fact, Sea Change can be a way to sustain many of the efforts of advance. There's another effort out of the APLU, the Aspire Alliance, and that's another institutional change effort. The Inclusive Excellence from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, that is aimed at students mostly, in the inclusion of all students, especially those who belong to groups that are underrepresented in science. And then NSF Includes as well, which is inclusion across the nation of communities of learners and of underrepresented discoverers in engineering and science. So next one. ASU is already a charter member of Sea Change, of AAAS Sea Change. This is separate from the bronze level application process, but we are members. And what this shows is that we publicly, as an institution, commit to the Sea Change principles. And these principles are part of a proactive approach for advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in STEM, and because, you know, this should be everywhere in STEM and beyond, right, at the scale of the institution itself. So the Sea Change has a couple of different pillars to it, and one of them is the Institute. And the Institute, this is where a lot of research on this topic is compiled. So there's trainings and courses and all kinds of resources and events. And so there's the Institute. And then there's the community. So we are not the only institution who is trying to make efforts in this area. And so Sea Change brings together other institutions to share best practices, to build partnerships, to collaborate. And then there are the Sea Change Awards. The awards are a recognition system where colleges and universities, as well as schools or departments in some cases, they can also apply for awards. So the awards reflect a commitment to this very systematic self-reflection and coming up with an action plan to enhance the institution's ability to attract and retain the best students, the best faculty, the best staff. Next one. So as I said, there's a repository of resources within the institution, and we have access to that, to the trainings, to the webinars, and ASU participates in moderated conversations and in this community. So I mean, it's a process that must be fully informed and have a structure to it. And I'll turn it over to Stephanie now.
Yeah, thanks, Miki. So as Miki mentioned, ASU became a charter member of Sea Change in October. In October, we also submitted an application for an Institutional Bronze Award. At this moment, they only have the Institutional Bronze Award because the whole process of AAAS engaging with Sea Change and developing it is just underway. They've said it repeatedly that in this pilot phase, they're really relying on us as institutions to help them to design the process, which is something that's very exciting for us. So just some clarifications. First of all, Bronze Award does not mean money. There's no financial support associated with that. That must be committed by the university. And so, and also, as Miki said, what it is it's not to recognize achievement so much as it is to recognize a commitment to change. And so you'll see that when I walk you through what the application actually entails. 3 institutions received bronze awards in 2019. It was UC Davis, Boston University, and UMass Lowell. The application includes this internal self-assessment, and as Miki mentioned, it's as you would expect from AAAS, it's evidence-based, and so they have a whole series of questions that you have to respond to. Through that process, there's an identification of key issues. And a critical aspect of this is the SMART action plan. So it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented plan that guides the institution forward. What would happen if we were to get this award is that we would then, over the coming 5 years, is that we would implement the action plan. But the action plan, you can think of it as kind of a sketch or a framework because they're expecting it to evolve as we move forward over these 5 years. So the award application and action plan development core team was chaired by Miki. Deb Clark, the Vice Provost for Academic Personnel, participated. Stanley James, the current Vice Provost for Inclusion and Community Engagement. Tiffany Lopez is the incoming Vice Provost for Inclusion and Community Engagement, as well as the Director of the School of Film, Dance, and Theater. Becky Herbst, the Associate General Counsel, was involved. Joan Brett at WP Carey took the overall lead in shaping the action plan. I'm in the School of Sustainability, and actually I'm on the AAAS Committee on Opportunities in Science. And that's the committee that oversees the Sea Change program for AAAS. And so I came to ASU in 2018, and in the February 2019 meeting of AAAS, when the first pilot phase of the 3 institutions was announced, I was thinking, oh, this sounds so perfect for ASU. And so it was something I brought back to people, including the provost, and talked about ASU putting together an application. Kim Scott from School of Social Transformation is also the director of the Center for Gender Equity in Science and Technology, and she's been critical participant from the very beginning, as well as Steve Elliott, a postdoc at CGEST, has also been really instrumental to putting this application action plan together. So this is what the application looks like. So you can see it looks long in terms of all of the different categories. This was one of the funny things. We had a hard limit of 17,000 words. And when we put all the pieces together that came from all those people that I just showed you in the core team, it actually was like 16,500 words. And so that was one thing I was able to tell AAAS is actually that the word count is really pretty reasonable. So the application includes a letter of endorsement from the head of the institution. So President Crow submitted a letter of endorsement. We then have a description of the institution, the fact that we're a public university, our setting in Arizona, all of that kind of information. We talked about the self-assessment team, and I'll get to that in just a minute, who participated in it and what we relied on in terms of information. We then describe the institutional composition. And as Miki mentioned, this is kind of a baseline, where are we now in terms of all of these different areas? And even though we're required to report on administrators, graduate students, and undergraduate students, as Miki said, this first phase of the Sea Change Bronze designation is focusing exclusively on faculty in terms of the action plan. We then reviewed key transition points and what we're responding. The guidance document is something like 30 pages in and of itself with lots of questions. And so they were asking questions about what are our policies in terms of recruitment and hiring, faculty promotion and tenure, and faculty retention. We then talked about policies and practices with respect to career and professional development. This includes faculty reviews, such as annual reviews, where there's information about structured faculty or informal faculty advising and mentoring, faculty pedagogical support. Flexibility in career breaks was a really interesting category because we had started drafting that section early because it was, it basically asked for what are your policies on each of those, and then COVID hit. And so we had to, substantially revise all of this to talk about, what's been happening over the past year and, how things might be changing in the future, so there were a lot of open questions. We then reviewed institutional policies for diversity and inclusion, diversity and leadership, and institutional climate and culture. And this includes what fora are there, such as these here today for open discussion, institutional climate, have there been any surveys, what our policies are for sexual harassment and assault, faculty workload, and any information that we can provide on role models and diversity. The process overall, and this was PowerPoint coming up with these icons, so I just want to say I didn't select them and I tried to change them, but I wasn't able to. So this little hat is kind of funny here. But anyway, so we had the core team, which I had just reviewed. I do want to note Monica Gahn was instrumental in providing information. She wasn't on the core team in the end because she had a sabbatical. And Erica Camacho participated early on, but then she went to NSF. And so she wasn't involved in the final preparation. And the main roles of the core team were both preparation and review of the application and the action plan. In addition, we had the assessment team. So the assessment team was 21 additional faculty, staff, and administrators, and their primary role was guidance and review of the action plan. We had intended to have a different sort of engagement, both with the assessment team and also with key groups in the campus, the various campuses. But because of COVID, what we wound up doing was we had 3 group Zoom meetings. The first one was in person and the following 2 were via Zoom. Plus we conducted 22 individual interviews. Miki and I did those. We also held 5 focus groups, and these were groups ranging from 10 to 30 people, spanning, we had one on early career faculty, one on tenured faculty, another one on JEDI or DEIB advocates. Also, we had high-level leadership, and then we had one with the associate deans. Monica Gahn, under the Advanced Social Science Research Program, also conducted 35 interviews, and these were very in-depth interviews, and she provided us some of the initial results from those interviews that were relevant to the questions that were being asked. And in addition, as I already mentioned, we provided baseline information on the institutional composition. We do want to say that both the president and the provost have been engaged with this process from the beginning. As you can see from the members of the core team, most of them or a lot of them are from the provost's office. And we met several times with Mark Searle and also with President Crow. So the foundation for the application and action plan in the end, after all of these meetings and focus groups and consultations, we decided to found it in the charter. So we all know the charter, but in interviews with faculty, many people say, yes, we're definitely applying the charter to students. You know, we could do a better job, but this is something that is at the core of what we do. But we don't see it applied systematically to faculty as well. So if you think about this, you know, think about ASU as a comprehensive public research university measured not by the faculty it excludes, but by whom it includes and how they succeed. How the faculty address research of discovery and public value, and how the faculty are engaged with assuming fundamental responsibility for the social, economic, and cultural and overall health of the communities it serves, as well as the faculty are a community that ASU serves. We found this to be a guiding principle that we could thread throughout the action plan. And this is something that we think is really at the core of ASU's identity. And it was really something that once you think about how you apply it systematically throughout all of the different elements of hiring, promotion and tenure and retention, we believe it can have a transformative impact. One thing I do want to note is that while the AAASC change, I think Miki said this too, does focus on STEM, from the very start, Mark Searle said that he and President Crow as well, that they believe that the ASU application and action plan should be university-wide. So the action plan is a integrated, centralized and decentralized approach. You know, ASU has lots of different units, and we have a strong sense of governance, distributed governance. And so this is something that we took into account, you know, as we developed the action plan. And we want to say from the outset that the action plan integrates President Crow's ASU commitment to Black students, faculty, and staff. It furthermore addresses how engagement of the president and the provost, the deans, college leadership, the faculty, and then also the collaborative ASU diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging network. This is both some formally established organizations as well as more of the informal network as well. And grants such as Advance and Includes and HHMI. So I'll turn it over to Miki now to talk about the next steps.
I have to remember to take myself off mute. I saw a meme the other day that said the saying for 2020 is, "You're on mute."
Right.
So yeah, we did turn in the application a few weeks ago, and they say we'll hear something, you know, this winter, hopefully December, January, something like that. But this is not a process that stops now. This is just the beginning of going forward. And so what happens is if we do get the bronze award, we would have to reapply even to sustain our bronze in 5 years, or perhaps we hopefully would decide that we, you know, have done some things that have you know, had some positive effects, and maybe we want to apply for silver and then gold, right, to just keep advancing these efforts. So so this is the difference between the bronze, silver, and gold levels. So I should add to this to say that each institution that enters the award process, they're considering their own mission, their own conditions, their own challenges. And Stephanie really brought up the charter, something at ASU that's unique to us and to our mission as a university, and something that I think for most of us is really why we're here, and it's central to our activities. Another thing that's really central to ASU is interdisciplinarity. And so I'm hoping that in our discussion that follows, this is something that we can talk about, because I think SFIS is so, you know, uniquely at the forefront on this for the university, because these issues are complex as they are. They're even more complex when we think about them beyond the siloed traditional departments, right, in interdisciplinary work. And so I'm really looking forward to discussing that. But this slide just shows some of the differences between the bronze, silver, and gold levels. So we took a baseline trying to identify some key issues, And the next level up to silver would be to demonstrate some impact, right? And how do we know whether we had some impact? We have to measure these things. And by the gold stage, that would be something where ASU would serve as a beacon to other universities. And I think in many ways, ASU does already. And so I think that this is really attainable for us as a higher education institution that's setting the pace around the world. So, okay, the next slide. So it's going to be a few years before they have the school or departmental awards up and running, but they really see this, Sea Change really sees this as a simultaneously top-down and bottom-up approach. And so these two things have to be reinforcing. And by top-down, we mean the institutional awards, right? Thinking about the design of the institution and how that design can promote equity and inclusion and belonging. And also bottom up, because it's got to be efforts of individual schools in responding to that, right? I mean, because every school across our campus is so different and has its own challenges, there has to be an interaction between these two things. And so that's why Stephanie discussed the integrated top-down, bottom-up approach. So it will be possible for schools in the future to apply on their own, particularly, schools that are as ASPIS that are thinking about, really seriously thinking about these issues and making some great strides. So the Institutional Bronze Award, it's been, I think Stephanie mentioned, it's been piloted since 2017, but these are just really the initial phases, and this is a living process, right? It will change as we go forward, both for AAAS and for institutions that sign on to it, such as ASU. Okay, next one. And so we just want to finish up with a short mention of some work that Stephanie and I are collaborating with some others on. So we got an Nsf Rapid Grant to study what happens basically when science moves home. So we're all talking from home today, and we all face, students and faculty alike face all kinds of challenges in working remotely, particularly when schools and daycares are closed, right? So caregivers face additional challenges during the day. These new family obligations disrupt work routines. They disrupt the collaboration patterns that we once had. So how do these things shift under remote work, in the COVID-19 era? That was our rapid grant. That's what we want to study. And we want to know how this varies across academic ranks, how it varies across disciplinary boundaries, and how existing inequalities and forms of systemic marginalization, how those interact with this pandemic, right? It's certainly exacerbating existing forms of inequality. And so at the upcoming, I don't know if you all know, but the upcoming AAAS meetings, ASU is a host. They are virtual, but ASU is a host. So it's an exciting time for ASU. And Stephanie and I have convened a panel that includes Barry Bozeman from ASU, who will be presenting our research from our Rapid Grant. Shirley Malcolm, who is the founder and director of this AAAS Sea Change. And if you look online, we should have given the URL, but it's like AAAS.seachange. So you can Google it, right? Shirley has a video on there that it's like 4 minutes and so worth your time. She's had a lifetime of work in this area. And so I think her contributions on this panel will just be, really amazing. And then also Margaret Linen from Scripps, who has a fundamental role there. And it's moderated by a scholar at Texas A&M, and then Steve Elliott, the postdoc who is on our Sea Change process. And so we're going to be talking about the big questions about, how has COVID-19 and remote work affected the scientific process, right? The consequences for STEM research, for higher education, for academic advancement, for interdisciplinary work in particular. And our panel is very interdisciplinary. So, and I think we'll focus a lot on systemic marginalization in STEM and the disciplinary boundaries and the natural and social sciences. So that's the end of our remarks today. And we are really looking forward to a discussion with all of you. And not only do we welcome your questions, I talk about the challenges of remote work, and my dog is barking in the background. So we really welcome your questions, but in addition, we would very much like to know about all of the efforts, the existing efforts in SFIS, and also the things that you want to do. And so I'll turn it over to all of you now.
Great, thank you guys so much. That was really helpful understanding both the process that you've been going through and the substance of the work itself, and thrilled that you will be presenting your work at the AAAS meeting. And I've got the link to the meeting there in the chat as well. So feel free there are not that many of us here today, so feel free just to pipe up with questions or raise your hand in Zoom or stick a question in the chat and I'll convey it.
I have one question. So when it comes to I saw gold, there's an as a beacon indication there that I'm curious about, partly because you talked about bottom up within the institution. I'm wondering if the community of awarded institutions will also have sort of a bottom up movement toward the agencies.
To some degree, they see that the departmental awards as their kind of bottom up. But Miki, maybe you want to address that as well. So.
Yeah, I think they present that as the bottom up, but I would see bottom up efforts also not only including schools, but the range of initiatives that we have on campus and all the existing groups that we have so it would, for me, the bottom up would also include people, right? Yeah.
Oh, but I should clarify, when they say a beacon to other institutions, I think they're looking for sort of like best practices and things that we're doing that others can model. So if we have a strong bottom-up approach within our institution that could work at other places, then that would be something that we could be a beacon for. Does that address your question?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, does the beacon attract for the sake of conversation, promotion, and change, or does the beacon sort of more of a megaphone to spread, that kind of standards information, which I think they're both important, I think.
I mean, already within the charter membership community, it's been really interesting about kind of sharing what people are doing, and so there's an exchange that's going on from that perspective.
I think that's a really interesting thing to think more about. I'd actually like to hear your thoughts on this because ASU has been such a trendsetter, and a lot of institutions across the country look to us for, in so many regards, particularly in our interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work, in our access mission, and that this could be just another place where we potentially can really lead the way.
Yeah, I had a sort of related question about the beaconness, and I get and appreciate the evidence-based aspects of the other elements, but it seems like beacon status gets a little more challenging to think about what the evidence base for that is. And is that well articulated yet? Is it meant to come from the institutions? And, because I think about where ASU sits in terms of leadership around a variety of these issues, and I think you've nailed a couple of the places where the university does lead, but it's also the case that there are a lot of other places where we're following in this area. And so, for example, in the hiring that we're doing now in SFIS, that is where we've put together an initiative in JEDI in science, technology, and innovation as a hiring initiative, and created a request for a statement about commitment to and participation in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion from job candidates, we looked to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for that, and they had looked to University of California, Los Angeles for that, and I think there may have even been a predecessor to UCLA's work on this. So, you know, there are places where we are strong and out front in the overall framing, and some highly specific places, a couple things that we're lacking. And I think the challenge, particularly that state institutions are going to have here, where the conditions politically in each state to be able to be out in front to address some of these issues, may make that gold status additionally difficult for some public institutions.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, to answer the first part of what you were saying is I don't think it's clearly articulated by AAAS yet. And when we first met with them, they used the analogy that they were building the plane while they were flying it. So I think that it would be a great to give them some input on what that might mean. And, you know, these comments are really helpful.
Yeah, that was one of the things, and that would be interesting to hear from other people too, because, you know, so I went through that, you know, in excruciating detail, the table of contents, but they are really looking, one thing that was really attractive to us is that we can help shape the process. You know, that was what was really neat to be coming in as one of the, you know, in one of the first two cohorts. And so they've already asked us, you know, what could have made the application easier or more useful or whatever. And so like if people see categories that weren't there, you know, not obviously, then that means that they're not high enough priority to be highlighted. You know what I mean? And so I think that that also looking ahead for the silver and bronze, they would also be really, you know, eager to get input from us as to what we think would be useful, you know, to be promoting for those two.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Marisa Brazil, and Sean Dudley just passed along the invitation to me. And so I apologize for joining late, but I'm very excited to hear about your efforts. I'm the Associate Director for Outreach and Community Engagement for ASU Research Computing, also part of Sean's team within Research Technology. And I'm especially interested in all of these topics. I've done a lot of work on the national level and the regional level with the Rocky Mountain Advanced Computing Consortium. I am the chair of the Women in HPC High Performance Computing chapter. But also there's a national conference called the Practice and Experience in Advanced Research Computing. So that's an annual conference. It's been around for a few years. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair for 21, which will likely be a virtual conference. But a lot of the work that I've done over the years has been around recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce within research computing and data professionals. So I'm super excited to be involved and would love to hear more and help out if there are opportunities for me to help, and I'm happy to volunteer.
Definitely. So one of the things that when I was at that first panel that I mentioned at AAAS in February of 2019, when that first cohort, you know, was reporting to the committee, what they all said was they were amazed at what was happening on their campus. They had no idea that there was so much expertise and that there were so many initiatives. And so it's great to meet you, and and we found the same, you know, that, you know, as you said, Dave, you looked to class for one thing, and, you know, from another, or from SFIS, actually, we were pointed to you for a couple of the policies and practices that you have. So the thing through Sea Change is the idea that you can amplify this, right? You can kind of, you know, get people talking to each other. You know, you can, best practices don't just end within the unit that adopts them, you know, and also that we connect in expertise along the lines of what you just talked about, because you know, it really doesn't make sense to have so many people here who are working on this from so many different directions and not to get more than the sum of our parts. I'm
relatively new to ASU, so being able to, I've done more nationally, but to be able to connect back with ASU and find areas where I can get involved at ASU is really important. The other thing that I might mention is in my role as Women in HPC chair for RMAC, I was just asked as of this week to help provide some broadening participation support for a proposal for the AI Institutes and NSF AI Institute proposal that's supposed to be going in. And so that was, that was a great opportunity to be able to highlight ASU, and then of course our work, on a regional level, but fingers crossed the proposal gets funded, but that was a great opportunity as well.
So one thing I can mention there is something that's very exciting is this actually came out of the advanced program. And that was another thing that Miki had mentioned this, but at that panel, they said, oh, if you've got an advanced grant recently, then that kind of gives you, includes HHMI, all of those, they give you sort of a baseline to move from. And under the advanced grant, they're developing a dashboard that collects faculty data on faculty. And currently there's a graduate student dashboard that's just amazing. You can compare ASU to national, information, all this kind of stuff. And so I under the advanced grant, they are going to be putting together this dashboard, and it's going to be informed by some of the, the issues related to sea change. And so I think that will, for future grants, I think there'll be a much easier kind of not exactly clearinghouse, but much easier hub to connect into to set this baseline for future proposals.
So in your tour through ASU, what's the coolest, most interesting thing you've discovered about how the university is operated in this space? And what's the most horrifying thing?
So I'll do horrifying. Maybe Miki, you can do cool. So horrifying, it's not horrifying, but it's so frustrating that there's so much going on and that we don't have synergies. So many people know it's important to make progress in this area. And, I've been a woman in STEM for a really long time. I do work on Arctic sea ice, which is like, one of the least diverse, it's gotten better, but, I was up there in the field on ships, but, the only woman for 30 days, so it's like really extreme. And it's just amazing how, everybody says this all the time, how slow things move, and I feel like that's the thing that's just so frustrating. You see so many people have been trying for so long, and, we just haven't progressed more than, we should be farther with this than we are. So I think that's my horrifying. Miki, how about you? What do you?
And the flip side of all the things going on, it was really, I think, a difficult process to try. There are so many things that we probably need to know about and don't know about, but the things we did learn about were really amazing, right? There are many groups on campuses, different initiatives, particularly in SFIS as a leader, and thinking about this in terms of interdisciplinarity in the college and some of the things that are being done in the college on the hiring end. So, at the flip side of this is that there are these pockets of excellence. Of course, we can do better, but there are these pockets of excellence, and how to try to think about that great challenge of how to scale those up, and whether they would work everywhere, because schools are different, but perhaps some of them will. So to get more of that sharing of the information and things that are working.
Another positive along those lines is it came from so many different directions about this application of the charter to faculty, because it has been really transformative in terms of students. Of course, we're not we could do better, right? But you talk to people and they say, yeah, I get it. That's why I'm here. I'm here because of this. You know, I came recently, and yet, you know, it really has not been applied in a systematic way to faculty. And so I think the power of that, you know, the kind of the simplicity and the, you know, the mission relevance of that. Many of us who've been working on this are really hopeful, and the fact that that idea came up from so many different places, you know.
And maybe to add to that, the success that we've seen at ASU amongst undergraduates in having a student body that looks like our state, that looks like our nation, that's reflective. And so that's a really hopeful thing for the future, right? And we know we need to do better amongst graduate students. We know we need to do better amongst faculty, amongst leadership, but certainly the successes at the undergraduate level are promising.
Also, I'll just say one more thing. So the presidential commitment, right? As you saw with the presidential commitment to Black students, faculty, and staff, you know, and what he wrote, you know, he wants ASU to be a leader, you know, in this area, right? And so having that support, you know, as well, is hopefully, you know, really going to affect change.
Great,
I'd like
thank
to
you. Cynthia? Oh, who we got? Caroline, please.
Yeah, hi, David. Nice to see you. I'm Caroline Vanningen Dunn, and I'm really happy to be hearing what's going on. We were very interested in the Sea Change project after Cynthia pointed it out. She and I work closely together. And given the invitation to connect and try to, you know, find out what else is going on at ASU, I just thought I'd let you know that we're doing something that's comparable to what I see Sea Change doing, in that that you did an assessment and as a team figure out what it is that you need to do and how to pursue that so you can actually affect change. We've been doing that with Hispanic serving institutions that are two-year institutions, community colleges across the country. And Cynthia's been instrumental in pulling all that together and developing the assessment, building on work that we've done with these two-year HSIs over the past 5 to 10 years. And more recently with her input, basing the improvement on our assessment on research and really understanding what is going on with, in particular, the identity and intentionality of supporting Hispanic students. So it's very much Hispanic centric, HSI centric, although it doesn't have to be limited to that. But it's something that we're continuing to build and are writing proposals to be able to take this work across more two-year HSIs. So what we're doing is external to ASU. What I'm hearing you want to do is do something comparable internal to ASU. So I see that there's a really nice opportunity that we have here to figure something out. So I just want to let you know we're here. We're the Science Foundation Arizona Center for STEM, SFAZ Center for STEM. We've been at ASU for just over 2 years and have been doing this work out of the Science Foundation Arizona nonprofit for about 5 to like I say 10 years. So, and Cynthia's on the line too, and I think she's getting well immersed with SFIS. So just want to say hello.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting us know about that, because you're exactly right. I mean, this would be really super to transfer what is possible from what you're learning into the ASU setting, right? So
right.
This would be an
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I also think it might be interesting to look at the self-assessment out of the Sea Change or the AAS and see how that compares to what we call our self-assessment, because it is quite extensive. It looks across faculty and students. It focuses in on STEM. And so I was just curious as to how much the Sea Change self-assessment focuses in on STEM. Looks at disaggregated data as well for different across STEM and non-STEM and different groups. So
yeah, if you could send us those categories, you know,
Sure.
that you use, that would be great, because we actually just got a request from AAAS. You know, is there anything, we're changing our guidance documents. Is there anything we should include? And so
Okay.
could really inform it.
Yeah, we'll send you a website that has our
Great.
whole model on it. So,
Thank you.
okay.
So having popped in and out of this meeting today, have you done the assessment already and completed it and seen the outcomes? Okay. Okay, so yeah. So is that something we can look at? Can we see the assessment itself? How does that work for you guys?
It's in this is under the provost's office. And so, you know, I think that probably if you were, probably the best is if you were to contact them, and especially, you know, now we're in the phase of getting a new provost who's going to have a strong focus on this. So
Okay. But Stanley James can reach out to her then. She probably, Stanley James, did I hear you say that she does that work?
Stanley James, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You can contact her.
Yeah, I can reach out to her. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question. Is it part of your plan to socialize your findings across the university?
Yeah, so Miki, do you want to address that actually?
Yeah, I'm actually not entirely sure about this because it is under in the provost's office. So I think that would probably be something that I shouldn't weigh in on.
Understood.
Yeah.
When the recording is off, you might give us some some more on that.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, there is this, we'll find out in December, January or so about the award status. So we're kind of in this like limbo right now too, where they might ask us for revisions and all this kind of stuff. So, thank you for putting the link in.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. Is important work, and it's another thing that we didn't know about. Like we said, ASU. I knew we were at a big institution, but this was kind of my first time of sort of wow, just the scale across many locations and all the things that are going on. But still, this common denominator of so many people who this is a really important issue and something that many people across our campus dedicate their lives to. And so that, I mean, finding that was, I think, really kind of a profound thing for me.
Might one think about, again, in terms of, sort of socializing and building this? I mean, ASU, to have another website is silly, but, ASU does have these cross-university websites, the health one, the global one. There's one in something that I'm trying to develop in public interest technology and so on, that integrate, particularly say the sustainability one, integrates operations and academics in a way that perhaps this area might. And
yeah, we definitely, I mean, it's actually something that I was reading the materials recently for Sea Change, and they said basically every institution is saying we need to connect the dots better, right? And so we obviously refer to ways of doing that. And we actually were looking at some examples of other institutions that do a good job of cross-cutting, right? Going from human resources, right, to promotion and tenure, to childcare, you know what I mean? So I think that's something that probably will come under the new provost, as well as Tiffany James as well.
I think it's one of the grand challenges, particularly for ASU, is a way of like knitting this together the right way, where you don't want to centralize this, right? And there's a lot of innovation that's going on. There's context matters, and for many individual efforts and organizations, like in no way would one want to sort of step on that or try and bring it in under an I don't know, not centralize it in some way, but still in some way knit things together in the right way to keep momentum going and share practices and share experiences and things like that. And so a website is one thing, but I'm thinking that there have to be additional ways to do this. And I think that's going to take some innovative new approaches.
Are you thinking of or doing like research as you go about the process and about the experience as you go through this whole action plan implementation and continuous improvement.
Yeah, so this is one thing that the assessment team this wider group came up with, and it's like, yeah, we've been taking all these actions, but what's the impact? How do we measure that? How do we know what's working and for whom, and what are some unintended consequences, right? So, so I really feel like that's important, and it would be great to get ASU researchers, scholars involved and helping to do that.
And that could be a huge interdisciplinary play
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah,
So-
that's a huge opportunity, and that goes to
So-
the beacon maybe too.
So we're at the top of the hour, and this has been a good conversation so far. It's time to turn the recording off. I'd like to invite the folks who are not the doctoral students in the program to say farewell